The text came just after I picked Abby up from school, wedged between a reminder about early dismissal and an alert about a snowstorm sweeping across the state. One line. That's all Marissa sent. If you're free, you can drop by Saturday night for the holiday party. No, we'd love to see you. No, the kids will love playing with their cousins. Just generic. Sterile. Like it could have been sent to anyone. I stared at it longer than I'd like to admit, willing some warmth to appear if I reread it enough times. It never did. I didn't respond right away. That night, I hovered over my phone more times than I could count, fingers twitching, second-guessing every word I might say. Should I ask what time? Should I offer to bring something? Should I pretend this was normal? Eventually, I typed, would it be helpful if I brought a dish? I can make the sweet potato casserole the kids love. Then I hit send. The response was silence. That dull gray delivered sat beneath my message like a forgotten ornament on a tree nobody bothered decorating. The next morning, Abby was spinning in the kitchen, practicing her jingle bell rock routine in her fuzzy socks while Max mashed his cereal into soggy mountains. Are we going to Aunt Marissa's party? She asked. I want to show everyone my dance. Max joined in, humming offbeat and beaming. That was it. The decision was made, not by me, not by Marissa, but by the innocent hope in my children's voices. Hope that hadn't been bruised yet, not in the way mine had. I spent Thursday night wrapping gifts. One by one, I labeled them with hand-drawn reindeer tags. Abby insisted we make one for Aunt Marissa too, even though I hadn't told her about the text. She just assumed we were invited. That's the thing about kids. They expect to be wanted. I pulled out the scarf I'd been knitting for months. It was meant to be Marissa's birthday gift, but I never mailed it. I told myself it wasn't the right color. The truth? I wasn't sure she'd want anything from me, but I packed it anyway. By Friday, the news anchors were chirping warnings. Blizzard conditions possible. One smiled as if it were festive trivia. I sent one more message. Still planning to come by tomorrow evening. Let me know if anything changes. Again, nothing. But this time, I took the silence as permission. Saturday morning arrived sharp and bitter. I loaded the casserole, the gifts, the scarves, and 2 layers of coats into the car. Max was giddy. Abby had already memorized the cousins' names, and I kept saying, almost there, even as I gripped the wheel tighter with each mile. 7 hours. That's how long we drove. The snowstorm swallowed the highway in Iowa. Visibility dropped to nearly nothing, and my knuckles ached from holding the steering wheel. My breath fogged the windshield faster than the defroster could fight. There were moments, brief and private, when I considered turning back, but I didn't, because part of me believed, even then, that maybe this year would be different. We pulled into Marissa's street just after dusk. The snow had calmed, but the cold had settled like it had every intention of staying. Abby clutched her handmade card to her chest. Max had already fallen asleep, his cheek warm against my shoulder as I carried him toward the glowing porch. Every step I took was careful, deliberate, like I was trying not to crush the hope I'd carried this whole way. The front door was slightly open. Laughter spilled out like heat from a furnace. But no one was watching for us. No one stepped outside. And deep down, I already knew. The front steps were slick with packed snow. I shifted Max gently in my arms, his tiny boots dangling beside the casserole dish balanced precariously on my hip. Abby walked ahead, her scarf already unraveling in the wind. By the time we reached the door, my gloves were damp, and my arms ached from the weight of everything. My son, the food, the unspoken hope I hadn't dared name. I nudged the door open. Warmth hit us instantly, cinnamon and baked ham. Laughter echoing down the hallway. Polished floors gleaming under twinkling lights. A house prepared for celebration, but not for us. Abby instinctively bent down to wipe her boots on the mat. I followed, scanning the foyer for somewhere to set the casserole. Coats lined the hooks, boots perfectly arranged along the wall. There wasn't a single inch of space left. I held everything and waited. A woman I didn't recognize, wearing a gold cocktail dress and holding a flute of champagne, glanced at me as she passed. "Oh, are you someone's plus one?" she asked, barely pausing before turning away mid-laugh toward another room. I looked at the entry table. A printed seating chart was taped beside a basket of place cards, each typed and neatly aligned. I searched the list again and again. Nothing. No Lauren. No Abby. No Max. "Mom, where's our seats?" Abby asked softly, peering up at me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I walked her toward the coat rack, only to find it full. I ended up draping our coats over one arm while still holding the casserole with the other. The foil was slipping. Her scarf, was poking out of the gift bag, slightly damp. Aunt Marlene passed by without even glancing at me. She was ushering Marissa's twins toward the dessert table. Abby followed instinctively, like muscle memory guiding her, but was intercepted. One of the other mothers blocked her gently, flashing a tight smile as she whispered something to her daughter and turned them away. I stood frozen in the foyer. Not cold, not yet, just misplaced. Across the kitchen, I finally caught sight of Marissa. Her back was turned, apron tied with perfect precision, laughing as a man beside her poured wine. She didn't glance up, didn't meet my eyes, didn't acknowledge my existence. Then Chloe floated past me, her glass filled with something red and garnished. She leaned in just enough to whisper without pausing. "Marissa didn't think you'd actually come. In this weather." Her smile was polished. "Hello." I adjusted the casserole dish in my grip, nearly dropping it. Still, no one offered to help. No one asked if we needed a seat or a hand or even a welcome. A sudden burst of laughter erupted from the living room. Someone called out a toast. I turned to Abby, who was standing quietly beside me now, her cheeks flushed, her voice barely audible. "Do they know we're here?" I nodded slowly. "I think they know," but my hands were trembling now, not from the cold, but from the sting of recognition. Not forgotten, not unseen, just unwanted. And still I stood there. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't leave. Not yet, because something in me, stubborn, foolish, faithful, still whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was a place for us somewhere inside that golden house, even if we had to carve it ourselves. The living room was packed. Velvet chairs pulled close together, people balancing paper plates on their laps, glasses clinking gently beneath the hum of a projector. Abby tugged on my coat again, pointing toward the kids' table. Her eyes lit up at the sight of cousins she hadn't seen in a year, seated with juice boxes and candy canes like it was the North Pole. She stepped forward, but a woman I vaguely recognized, one of Marissa's friends from the PDA, stepped in gently, her voice soft and clipped. "Oh, sweetie, that table's for the little ones who RSVP'd." She smiled like she'd just explained something helpful, not heartbreaking. I blinked. "We texted," I said quietly. "Twice." She gave a shrug, so slight it might have been a tic. Must not have been logged. Behind her, I saw Chloe whispering something to another guest. Both glanced toward me. Chloe's lips moved in perfect mockery, didn't think she'd come. Then she giggled, sipping from her wine like the joke had aged beautifully. I turned toward the hallway, heart racing. At the far end of the room, the slideshow had begun. A golden script faded in across the screen. Our family through the years. Photo after photo flashed across the wall. Birthdays, beach trips, holiday tables. Marissa, always smiling in the center, always perfectly lit. Her children, her friends, even old neighbors. But never me, never Abby, never Max. I waited, breath held, for just one image, one fragment of a memory that included us. It didn't come. Then an old Easter photo. I knew it well. We were kids, dressed in pastel dresses on the front porch. I remembered the itch of the lace collar, the way Mom told us to sit close. But on the screen, only Marissa remained. I'd been cropped out, neatly, surgically. Just her, holding her basket, looking flawless. Something sharp twisted in my chest. Abby leaned into me again, her voice small and honest. "Why aren't we in any of the pictures, Mom?" I looked at her and tried to smile. "Maybe we'll be in the next one," I whispered, though we both knew we wouldn't. The projector whirred gently, casting warm light across faces that looked nothing like mine. Across the room, Marissa stood and gave a little bow, glass in hand. "Thank you all for being part of this journey," she said, smiling with effortless poise. "This family thrives because we let go of what doesn't serve us." The applause was immediate, loud, seamless. Chloe dabbed her eyes with a cocktail napkin like they'd just heard a eulogy for dignity itself. Someone murmured, "She's always been the glue." Someone else added, "We're lucky to have her." No one turned around. No one saw me. No one noticed the woman standing at the edge of the room, the one who used to buy the birthday cake when Mom's check bounced, the one who sewed the Halloween costumes, the one who cleaned up after parties where her name never made it on the list. I felt like a ghost, present but unacknowledged, real but revisioned. I didn't cry. Instead, I took a step back, the scarf still folded in my hand. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't forgetting. This was erasure, with intention, wrapped in garland and toasted with champagne. After the slideshow, the lights came up slowly, like the party had exhaled. People shifted in their seats, stood to refill drinks, murmured about how beautiful the memories were. Abby leaned against my side, her paper plate untouched, her eyes still fixed on the screen long after it had gone black. "I thought they said everyone was in the video," she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Instead, I led her back toward the hallway. We passed the gift exchange table, now brimming with perfectly wrapped boxes, bows gleaming under chandelier light. A printed sign read "Caldwell Family Only." Abby paused, looking for her name. She found nothing. Neither did I. A group of guests nearby was laughing over something Marissa had said. Her voice rose above theirs, crisp, cheerful, confident. "Everyone who confirmed is listed." We had to keep it organized. I cleared my throat. "I did text you," I said. "I asked what to bring." Marissa turned slowly. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't sorry. She looked annoyed. "You didn't follow up," she said flatly. "I figured that meant you weren't coming." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but finally. I walked away without another word. My feet moved instinctively toward the foyer, where coats were now half slid from hooks. Guests laughing as they shook snow off boots they hadn't worn in hours. Abby was waiting by the staircase, sitting with her hands folded in her lap, eyes staring at the floor. I sat beside her and handed her something I'd found on the entry table, a name tag. +1 Abby. Scribbled in Sharpie, barely legible. No last name, no reference to me, just an afterthought. "What's this?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just something that doesn't belong." I stared at the guest list again. My name still wasn't there. And this time, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a message. Abby leaned into me as the hum of conversation picked up around us. "Can we go home now, Mom?" I crouched to her level, brushed a loose curl from her forehead, and smiled as best I could. "Not yet, but soon." She nodded. Even she could feel it, the weight in the air, the tension that hovered despite the candles and carols. Back by the refreshment table, Marissa was introducing Chloe's new boyfriend to a circle of friends. I stood just a few feet away. No one looked at me, not even accidentally. I could have been wallpaper. Chloe's boyfriend asked, "Is everyone here family?" Chloe chuckled and, without missing a beat, answered, "Oh, we all have our roles here. Some people support from the sidelines." Her voice didn't cut. It didn't need to. It slid under my skin with precision, like she'd practiced the line. A caterer passed behind me and said, "Excuse me, can you move that tray closer to the drinks?" I stepped aside without thinking. It wasn't until he looked again that he realized I wasn't staff. "Oh, sorry," he mumbled. I gave a short nod. No apology needed. The damage was already done. At the fireplace, Marissa raised her glass once more. "Just a quick toast," she called out. "To those who make this possible. Mom, for her wisdom, myself, for pulling it all together, and to the friends who remind us what real family feels like." A pause. No mention of me. Then she added, "This family thrives because we let go of what doesn't serve us." My stomach turned. People around her nodded like disciples in a quiet church. By the dessert table, Abby was still searching for her name on the place cards. I walked over. It wasn't there. Only Marissa's kids. And the cousins. Not my daughter. Not my son. I turned to the assistant, setting up the area. "Excuse me, was this a mistake?" She smiled with rehearsed sympathy. "We just included the children who RSVP'd formally. It helps with head count." "We did speak," I said. "I texted. Twice. Well, I guess it didn't get logged." Marissa appeared behind her, smiling like it pained her. "You always make things harder than they need to be, Lauren." That sentence, she'd used it before, whenever I challenged her, whenever I showed up without apology. I looked at Abby, standing quietly, her hands clasped, her hope shrinking by the minute. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. But I picked up the scarf from the gift bag, folded it neatly, helped Abby into her coat, wrapped Max's jacket around him where he still sat, half asleep on the couch. And I turned to Marissa one last time. If I had known silence was the price of belonging, I would have spoken up sooner. She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already walking. We stepped into the cold, and the door shut behind us with the kind of softness that hurts more than a slam. The snow had thickened again, swirling under the porch light in slow, deliberate spirals. Max stirred in my arms, his cheek pressed to my shoulder, still unaware. Abby followed me in silence, her boots crunching the salted driveway, her scarf now dragging slightly behind. We reached the car. I buckled Max in first, kissed his forehead, then turned to Abby. She was staring out the window, her eyes wide, that same stillness in her body I'd only ever seen after a nightmare. I reached for her gloves. They weren't there. Not in her coat pocket. Not on the seat. She must have dropped them inside. I hesitated. They were just gloves, cheap ones, too small already. But I couldn't leave them. Not after everything else that had been left behind tonight. "I'll be right back," I told Abby. She nodded without looking up. The door creaked as I re-entered the house. Music still played, now softer. Jazz Christmas, something smooth and too polished. The guests had mostly moved to the back of the house. The hallway was empty except for the faint echoes of clinking glass and overlapping laughter. I found the gloves near the staircase, where Abby had been sitting earlier. As I bent to pick them up, I heard my name. "She was always the storm," Marissa said. Her voice drifted from the kitchen, calm and clear. "We built peace without her." Zinnia's voice followed. "You handled her perfectly tonight. Honestly, I don't know how you do it." Marissa gave that little sigh she reserved for her most performative humility. She thrives on drama, but she knows better than to start it in front of me. They laughed. Soft, clean, satisfied laughter, like they just toasted to keeping their kingdom unshaken. I stood still, gloves in hand, chest tight. I didn't move until I heard another voice, one I hadn't expected. My mother. "I mean, it's been a hard year for her," she said. A pause. No defense. No challenge. Just complicity. I stepped away, back toward the hallway, my feet moving without thought. A little cousin was standing on a chair by the window, peeking through the curtains. When he saw me, he smiled and waved. I waved back. He didn't know. Not yet. He still believed everyone belonged. I turned toward the kitchen, just as Marissa raised another toast. "To those who actually show up, emotionally and otherwise." The crowd chuckled. Zinnia clapped. Even my mother smiled. It wasn't cruel. Not overtly. But it was knowing. That soft, suburban weaponry wrapped in grace, tied with expectation, passed off as unity. My hands were no longer shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't walk back in. I just turned, slipped out the door, and let it close behind me with finality. Outside, the air was sharp enough to cut, but it still felt warmer than the house I had just left. When I climbed back into the car, Abby looked at me with quiet expectation. I handed her the gloves. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered. I started the engine. The headlights cut through the snow, but I didn't move yet. I just sat there, watching the house disappear in the mirror. Lights glowing in every window, but none of them were for us. That night, after the kids were asleep, I brewed a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The house was silent, but inside me, something had begun to stir. Not rage, not grief, resolve. I opened my laptop. I didn't name names. I didn't accuse. I simply wrote what happened. How it felt to drive 7 hours through a snowstorm, to arrive unacknowledged, to stand in a foyer with no place to set down your coat, your food, or your existence. I attached the photo of the name tag +1, Abby, the picture of the seating chart, a blurry still from the slideshow where half my arm had made the frame, but nothing else. Then I typed the first line. Some families erase with silence. Others do it with planning. I hit post. I didn't expect anything to happen, but within the hour, everything did. The post didn't explode. Not at first. It sat there, quiet and still, like something waiting to be noticed. But then, slowly, comments began to appear. "This is heartbreaking. I saw that video. I thought something was off. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel." By morning, my inbox was full. Private messages from people I barely remembered, distant cousins, former co-workers of Marissa, a woman who'd been at the party 2 years ago. "I noticed the seating chart," she wrote. "I didn't know if it was my place to say anything, but I saw it." One message came from someone I hadn't thought about in years, a woman who worked at the same nonprofit Marissa often bragged about supporting. She wrote, "Thank you. Your story made me rethink a lot of things." Then came the text I knew would arrive eventually. From Marissa, "You're being dramatic. Take the post down before you embarrass everyone." I stared at her words. I read them again and again, the same way I used to reread her party invitations, hoping, searching for warmth that was never there. This time I didn't hesitate. "No," I replied. "I'm done hiding the truth." She never wrote back. Later that day, a neighbor dropped off groceries. No note, but I recognized the handwriting on the shopping list tucked inside the bag. It was my mother's, her way of saying something without actually saying anything. A loaf of bread, my favorite tea, Max's granola bars. Not love exactly, but something like it. I didn't text her. I didn't say thank you. Not because I was angry, but because the message had already been delivered. We were speaking in a language of silences now, and for the first time I understood its grammar. Zania posted a video the next day. I didn't watch it all. I didn't need to. "It's so easy to misinterpret things," she said to the camera. Sometimes people feel excluded when really they just isolate themselves. The comments didn't go the way she'd hoped. I was there. She wasn't imagining it. You don't get to erase someone and then blame them for disappearing. She posted proof. Sit down. By the weekend, the video was gone. I didn't gloat. I didn't even screenshot it. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. The silence that used to crush me had shifted. It no longer wrapped around me like a fog. It insulated me. Kept me from feeling guilty for telling the truth. Kept me from needing anything from people who didn't want to give. I went grocery shopping with Abby that Sunday. She grabbed a can of whipped cream and whispered, "Hot cocoa tonight?" "Absolutely," I smiled. 2 women in the frozen food aisle glanced in our direction. One gave me a polite nod, not sympathy recognition. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. Istut taller. I wasn't invisible anymore. Not because they saw me, but because I finally saw myself. Sometimes vindication doesn't come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it walks beside you in quiet places, like the checkout lane or the walk to the car, or the moment you slip gloves onto your daughter's hands and realize you didn't lose anything real. You just let go of what never loved you back. 2 weeks passed. The snow that once blanketed the streets had started to pull back, revealing slushy grass and the tired remnants of winter. I moved through each day with quiet steadiness. School pickups, groceries, folding laundry, phone calls with clients. Ordinary things, but something inside me had changed. I no longer checked my phone for an apology that wasn't coming. I no longer replayed the slideshow in my head, trying to find my face in photos where I'd been erased. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and my old journal. I hadn't opened it since before the divorce. But that night, the words came. I spent years trying to earn something that should have been mine by birthright. A seat at the table, a name spoken without hesitation, a place that didn't need defending. I paused, then added, belonging doesn't have to be earned. If it does, it isn't real. I closed the journal and looked around my home. Toys scattered under the couch, crumbs on the floor, the sound of Max snoring down the hall. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And in that moment, the silence inside me wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. A week later, while waiting for Abby outside school, another mom approached me. I recognized her vaguely. Annette, I think. She looked unsure, almost nervous, then said under her breath, "I read your post. Thank you. You told a story a lot of us don't have the courage to share." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just nodded. It was enough. That night, I met with a small group of women at the library. Some neighbors, some from town, a few strangers who'd reached out privately. We didn't start with therapy or healing mantras. We started with stories. Some brought tears. Others brought cookies. I brought both. We called it the uninvited circle. Not as a joke, but as a truth we'd earned. Every Thursday, we met in that quiet corner room. No one had to prove their pain. No one had to explain why they felt like the outsider at a table meant for them. We didn't promise healing. We promised to witness. And sometimes that was more than enough. A month later, Abby brought home an art project, a family tree. At the center were 3 names, Abby, Max, and me. No aunts, no grandparents, no fillers, just us. I framed it, not because it was complete, but because it was honest. One Saturday afternoon, we ran into Marissa outside the market. She was dressed in a pristine beige coat, walking beside a woman I didn't recognize. Our eyes met for a moment, and she looked away. I didn't. I smiled, not out of spite, not from superiority, but because I wasn't broken anymore. She could carry her silence if she wanted to. It didn't belong to me. That evening, I opened my journal again. I flipped back to that line I'd written just after the party. "I'm done begging to be seen." Underneath it, I added, "Now I build places where others feel visible." On Sunday, we went to the park. The air was crisp but kind, and the kids ran through the damp grass like it had never been covered in snow. I caught them mid-laugh, snapped a photo, Abby's cheeks pink, Max's curls catching the sunlight. That night, I printed it, slipped it into an envelope, wrote one sentence on the back. "This is what family looks like to me." No caption needed. Then I mailed it, not to ask for connection, but to draw a line between what was and what I had become.